The first question I'd like to ask, and I'll ask this of each of the technology providers, starting out with Kevin. Their customers made a presentation. In Kevin's case was Johnson & Johnson. So we know a current Meridian works in the medical products industry. And I wonder, Kevin, if you could just talk a little bit about what other industries you've been successful in.
Yeah, so, is this on? Yes. Okay. So Accruent is focused highly on asset management solutions, workplace management solutions. So you'll see us in oil and gas industry. You'll see us in pharmaceuticals. You'll see us in general manufacturing. So we provide solutions that, the best way to put it, because we're really wide, so it's all the way down to scheduling of conference rooms, all the way up to engineering document management systems that track your critical assets. So fairly widespread, but I would say we're most commonly found in the regulated industries.
Thank you. Thank you. Drew, if you don't mind, a similar question. Your customer was in oil and gas, Chevron, and what other industries is uptake found in?
Yeah, you bet. Can you hear me okay? So industrial AI company specializing in industrial intelligence. Just to break that down in layman's terms, that's going to be data and content and the math behind the analytics, right? I use the word math to make it a little easier. It's been pretty exciting for us because the breakdown is quite easy. Chemical, oil and gas, and now we're seeing huge growth in manufacturing, power and utilities, and also across metals and mining. Excellent. So it's been the data problem across the board, yeah. And the analytics is the analytics problem.
Excellent, thank you, Drew. And Mark, similar thing for GE Digital. What industries, other than the one that your customer spoke about today, do you play in?
Well, I think we're going to have a similar answer, right? We play in a very wide range of industries. Obviously, petrochemicals, chemicals, oil and gas, heavy mining, aviation, manufacturing, both discrete and continuous. So pretty much any industry that has assets worth protecting or worth increasing performance, we're going to play a role in. Also, a lot of regulated industries too. So power generation, nuclear, everything.
Excellent, excellent. So we're going to go to the audience for questions next. I do not have any prepared questions because we so often, you guys are smart, you know what you want to learn. So often we get such excellent questions from the audience. Preet is got a microphone. She will, oh no, all right. ARC folks have microphones. They'll come out and help you out, give you a microphone so we can hear you clearly. So just a hand. Anybody put up a hand for a question? And I'll just say that if you don't ask any questions, then I'm going to go from person to person and ask you questions. All right, who's coming up first? Go ahead, Preet, if you wouldn't mind.
I'm Tina Hall from Omron. My question is, do you have a preference or experience with starting out with more, with the type of data, such as linguistics or just pure mathematics, or a mixture of both, and how did you get to the process of getting some similarity between the two?
Is this mostly around the analytics side of it?
Yes, because I've been playing around with the data, but sometimes it's in text, and then sometimes I try to put it into a table, where some of it will go well into a table, other times it won't. So then I was wondering, even with the machine learning part, if having it all in text would work better than having it in tables or vice versa.
Who'd like to take that question?
I'll start and then let people build.
Please.
So I think one of the things you have to look at is what's the objective of having this data. Something that we have noticed, if you roll the clock back 20 years, it was a scramble to get data. And what we see now, there is a lot of data, but it's in disparate systems and in different formats and unorganized. So one thing I would say to understand where to start with is what are you trying to utilize that data for? Do you need all of the data? We have done a lot of good stuff in OCR and text recognition through work orders, through repairs, through open type of text definitions. Obviously, if we're looking at something more predictive based in a physics model, then you're going to need more technical data, more quantitative mathematical data. So I would say start with what are you looking for, then understand what the critical components of that data are, and which parts of that critical components do you have and are you sure of. Start there, then work yourself up. Too many folks try to run a marathon before they get off the couch to walk that first mile.
Drew, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll just compliment Mark by saying, I think the target or targets is the key. And then don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Just from working with several of your teams in this room is just them kind of having to, they could go 50-50 on formats and methods and different approaches, and just being able to make a justification, pick the one that's going to give you, the most near-term outcomes that you're looking for, and just try to keep it open as much as you can to build upon it.
Any other, anybody else want to add to that?
The only thing I'd say before the next question is that it's like eating the elephant example is one bite at a time. So I think Mark had the answer that I would have is that that you don't take on too much, and that you really figure out that problem you're trying to solve first, and then potentially go after smaller pilots and conceptualize and be able to break that data down into something that's more manageable, because you solve an awful lot of the problem that you originally have just by going after that smaller pilot and understanding your data a little bit better.
I'll add when we start talking about data and data management, I'd like to add that I think small data is much more important than big data. And what I mean by small data, maybe more focused data is a better term, is the data coming off a particular piece of equipment, for example, or a particular unit, and keep the structure of that data, knowing where it is and where it came from. And then when you start applying analytics to do, let's say, predictive maintenance, you're better off with that rather than a big data approach where you throw tens of thousands of data points at it and hope AI can figure it out. When you focus on the data associated with that particular piece of equipment, you're much more likely to get good results. Then, of course, you can build on that success. So if I take the example of a motor, for example, you take maybe a pump, rather. You take incoming pressure, outgoing pressure, delta P, maybe some the process data, maybe viscosity. But then also add onto that IoT data, like the current draw of the motor. And just with those 4 or 5, maybe there's a couple of other parameters, so you can come up with some very good predictive maintenance algorithms versus throwing everything you have in your data historian at it, and it'll be a long time before the AI figures it out. I see a hand up in the back. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yes. Hello?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, Michael Hoteling from ExxonMobil. In the realm of asset management, data quality is a critical part. And I'm curious in terms of, from the great presentations that were shared, who and how defines data quality in this realm?
Yeah, I'd like, if you don't mind, I'd like the user customers answer that first.
So would I.
David, I'll
Yeah, I would like
start
to
off
hear.
with you, if you don't mind.
So in my role, we're bringing data in as we find it in the field, and we're making that available to data scientists and engineers and engineers in the field even to act on that data or actually consume that data and use it. And they would be the ones who would observe whether or not the data had high quality or not. And by giving feedback to the people who are capturing the data, they may need to calibrate machines, or they may need to supplement data where there's gaps. Sometimes we go back to uptake and say, hey, we got a quality problem because we're not getting all the PI data, and then uptake would respond by figuring out what that gap was and go and fill it and automate it so that that gap wouldn't occur again. And maybe some anomaly in PI or something like that they're not picking up on, or something that the PI admin may have done that was obscure, that shouldn't have been done, but they did it anyway, or whatever. So the particular use case is analyzed and resolved, and then we put something in place to make sure that that doesn't happen again. But from a solution perspective, it's on the consumers of the data to make the observations and provide the feedback to the field to get a higher quality data from the field.
John, you want to give that a,
Yeah, I can take a shot at that too. For us, we have some objective criteria for data that we usually have set by engineers, quite frankly. That is given to the plants, and the plants are actually the ones that self-correct. And then we come back in as a governance role and look at that data and say, hey, we actually give them a score and give them a target. And we try to keep raising the bar. So that's what we have done. So we have half a dozen different measures of data quality that we use. So.
excellent. Bill?
I guess I could take the easy way out and say that data quality is defined by the user, but I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you need to have a system in place to validate and confirm your data to make sure that it's correct all the time. So that's my approach.
Yeah, I'd like to affirm what Bill said. And, when you're collecting the data, you should think about ways to validate it. Like, do you have a broken wire on an instrument and you're getting the same, initial reading, same reading over hours? Well, is there any software or anything you've put on top of that to identify that kind of error and raise an alert that there's perhaps a problem? And I'm sure that's a simple answer, but you folks who are much smarter than I about your control systems and data collection systems probably can come up with better examples. But the validation is inherent in how you collect and process the data, I think. Anybody else? Drew, Kevin, Mark?
I'll say this in service to Chevron, right? I think the big learnings have been, if we were to look back even a year or up to 5 years, the approach was very siloed around this whole data problem. So movement was separate from storage, was separate from context, was even separate from data quality and data integrity. And I think the big breakthrough, which has been literally in the last couple months, has been now we can actually string all those together. Azure's, to give you the Microsoft commercial, a huge enabler for us. And with what we've done, but being able to string all of it together, because what we were all finding, I think a lot of us in this room that have been after this problem going on 7 to 10 years now, is by trying to attack it in isolation, it was back to your AI, like it's treating each one of those like a big data AI problem. And what we've kind of all realized, and now have the technology to kind of finally kind of finish this, is actually string it all together so each one of those actually knows what the other one's doing. If I bring that into the OT world, right, specifically, there are things we know about when certain technologies were developed, right? Whether it's specific to a vendor or a time period of an automation platform, that whether it was OPC standards or something like, PI-AF, there's all these different things over the last 20 years. And so by us now being able to grab the best of the best, we can actually reduce this as an isolated problem and actually look at it as an integrated solution.
The only extra thing I got to say is the best way to get quality data is use the data. Don't create data you don't use. And I see it over and over and over where we'll go into a site or an organization and there's data that they're not using, but they're still creating it. And so you can't manage that. If you don't use that data, you'll never have the opportunity to make it quality data. So first things first, only create data you're going to use.
Go ahead if you
One
like.
tiny little thing, very quick. I'll just say, we hear so often across all industries, data is our number one issue. Either we don't have enough data to do a good analysis to get good results, or we don't trust our data, or it's incomplete, et cetera. If you don't have a data quality standard, and you don't have a way of measuring your ability to increase your data quality to that standard, and you don't have some sort of diagnostic systems to monitor that, it's a difficult problem to even have a productive conversation about. So I've seen a lot of clients that do not have a data quality standard in their basic practices. And so just putting some basic things in place will get that ball rolling and allow you to get an amazing amount of work done that you didn't think was possible.
And Michael, I know you have deep domain knowledge. Did that answer your question?
No, it was very helpful.
Oh, good.
I think it's a journey, and I agree with, Tom, right? One of the tough parts that we see is, the demand or the usage of the data is often nowadays being used by people who didn't create the data or further away from when the data was created. When you try to do that globally, you find out within a site everything's fine, but when you try to do that globally, you find quality issues across the realm. I'm just very curious of, how has that been done?
Good. Thank you.
There's a question here.
My first question is to David, that presented a journey very similar to ours in Vale, Luciana Silotto from Vale. So you talked about time series in OSI PI, you talked about cloud using the Azure platforms, data lake. So my first question for you is, are you creating data hubs, data catalogs, trying to contextualize what you showed there? And then a second question is that I saw you presented a background in architecture, right? So are you from IT or an OT side? And then for all of you guys, how you see IT-OT convergence providing value to this kind of discussion that we are having here? How to contextualize ERP data, other high-level IT applications data, combining with this raw data that we are getting from OT sites?
Yeah, so to answer the second question first, I've been flip-flopped between IT and OT throughout my career. Started out in IT, and then I worked for a number of companies that were in the oil and gas space, but most of it has been on business systems. And at Anadarko, I was a solution architect out in SJV for a number of years. Came back into the IT side on things like enterprise mobility and IRSM, and now I'm back in IoT. So I'm still going back to my IoT background from way back when. It's changed a lot, and I'm still learning. For your first part of the question, those whether or not we're creating hubs. No, we're creating a platform, I guess, in the cloud using Azure. We're focused right now on time series insights and putting our data in time series insights, and from there moving it to the data lake. Going forward, we're going to be transitioning to a product, ADX, because time series insights is getting deprecated by Microsoft to use the underlying platform ADX, which provides a lot more capability, frankly, than time series insights does, but it does have some gaps that we have to fill on our own to make ADX as suitable as for an end user as time series insights was.
Anybody else?
About IT-OT convergence, are your companies already in this journey, or still different departments, IT and OT, people talking the same table or not?
Yeah, I think we're moving towards a convergence, and even as a company, we're moving towards the convergence of providing services across upstream, midstream, and downstream, and seeing all that as one value stream. On the IT side, we certainly have teams that are focused on IT versus OT. So I'm on the OT product line, and I don't know if we have an IT product line, but we have other products and services that are probably mainly focused on OT. So we're a platform organization now, and so that's where we build our products and services based on the platform.
So I'll just add something from maybe not a specific customer, but the global view. I can say with what John mentioned about CP Chem, in just about every single meeting, workshop, engagement, there is IT in the room, as well as mostly business folks from the OT side of things. Now, it's a spectrum across the world, right? I've personally been involved with 100% IT implementations, and those were marginally successful in a lot of times, because sometimes it becomes a situation where the tail is wagging the dog. As John mentioned, it's not the IT folks that are scrambling to try to meet compliance. It's the plant managers, it's the superintendents, it's the business owners. So I think it has to be a collaboration. It is not either or, and there's no right mix in one facility or one industry or sub-industry, because some are a little bit harsher than others. But they have to collaborate and they have to work together. And that's where we see the highest level of success.
So the perspective I would take, a little bit to Bill's point earlier in his presentation on asset data and how it's starting to converge. A long time we saw maintenance and engineering working in parallel, not together. So you had data for maintenance over here and you had data for engineering over here. But that data made sense together, but we rarely brought it together. And then even if we brought it together, we rarely analyzed it and created insights out of it that would allow us to operate more optimally. But we're seeing those groups begin to work together more. I think the day we stop calling it IT/OT, we'll start working together a little bit more. Maybe IoT is our short version of that. But that asset data is becoming more relevant because of predictive, right? We couldn't do it 20 years ago. I'm here to tell you that. I was Johnson & Johnson 20 years ago. And we worked hard to get to predictive, but we couldn't get the data. It was over here. And then the other data was over here, but we needed it all right here. And I could do it, but it costed millions of dollars, and I kept having a tough time getting the approval for that. But I think with the way technology is today and the more of a push the easy button ability, it's allowing us to move faster. And I'll be honest with you, I think cloud is a driver for bringing IT and OT together, because it takes that element of ownership and puts it in where it ought to be, right? So the business side can own a cloud instead of the IT group having to own that cloud. And I think it's really driving the ability for both groups to work together more, rather than one owns it and the other one asks permission. So I think we're moving fast, and cloud is driving some of that.
I would just recommend, for those of you who took notes, let's not do IoT as the new acronym for that, because that's really confusing to some people. So.
Yeah. I'll just, I have a perspective on this that I'll pass on. If you go back 10, 15 years ago, and this is a change in IT and what it delivers. 10, 15 years ago, they were very focused on making sure the servers in the plant and in the in corporate for the ERP systems and other business systems were working well and configured properly and had enough capacity. And they were also focused on the desktop applications to make sure your PC and your Outlook and all networking was. So they were very much focused on this mechanical infrastructure to a great extent. And over the past 10, 15 years, a lot of that has been outsourced one way or another. So the desktop devices today, most businesses are supported by some outsourced group. With cloud, you have fewer internal servers, and now that support is done by the cloud provider. So IT has been able to redeploy their resources to start paying attention to outcomes of business processes, the business processes themselves, and much more towards the needs of the operating units within the company. So there's been a tremendous shift I think, in how the resources within IT are being deployed to provide much better support for the business leaders and to allow for IT/OT integration.
Yeah, just to shed a little more light from Chevron's perspective, we went through that reorganization and we aligned to a model where we have chapters and platforms, and the chapters support the IT competencies and the skills. And then, so I'm in a data architecture chapter, but so I report to the chapter, but I'm also serving the product line. So I'm a member of the OT product line as a data architect, but I still have my a foot in the door to the architecture community on the IT side.
And just to let you know, we in Vale now have a single technology department. No more IT and OT. We are together in a single technology. Okay? And then if somebody here is already in this journey, I'm available to share and to talk, to learn with you, okay?
What industry are you in? If you
Mining company,
Mining.
Vale.
Because
Yes.
I've heard that happen in companies in the continuous process industries like oil and gas and bulk chemical about 5-6 years ago, and I could see it migrating to other industries. Yeah. Good, excellent.
Hi, Caitlin Henderson from Dow. This is mostly a question for David, but anyone can comment. One of your slides, you had kind of a circle in the middle where all of your data lands in the cloud, and then kind of spokes to different applications, I think, in different circles around. I was wondering then if you allow data scientists or anyone to access the data from that centralized location, the data lake, or do you prefer the access to be through these individual applications? Do you think that you've got it all covered, or is it for security, or also obviously many data scientists maybe or engineers would like a visualization tool or something where if you're accessing directly to the data lake, you don't have that automatically built in?
Yeah, for the most part, the data is available to anybody who wants to innovate on it. So we're trying to make data as an asset available to everyone. But it's really so much data and so much depth into it that you really have to be on a team to take advantage of it. So in most cases, it's a team that's consuming that data, trying to make something innovative for the business or for the operations. But I'm sure there are some individuals, engineers and stuff that are perfectly capable of using these tools to tap into it themselves and create something really useful that cuts across the entire business. But we're not making it available we're not making all the data available, only the stuff based on a certain security level, and then people can have access to that. And they still have to request access to it to get access to it. But
I'll just jump in and say there's somebody in this room that said this on behalf of y'all that I think holds water, is y'all are able to use production data in a non-production environment with your model. And that is something that is extremely interesting to watch them do, because now working with the other teams in the organization, they're able to prototype rapidly, see things that they couldn't do before that, a year ago was a file transfer. And so now being able to say, with all those permissions and everything else, an engineer, data scientist, an analyst wants to go and do something, and they're doing that, and the production is fully protected. There's no chance of it interfering with anything that's happening in a refinery or an offshore platform.
Could you talk a little bit about governance and what I mean by how do you manage who can read it, who can edit it, who can create new data values? Do you have governance around this? I mean, because if you make the data available to everybody.
it's available, but we do have information stewards that own the data still. the data is owned by, obviously, the business units, and we get that data from them and put it in the cloud, but they're still the steward of that data. And I guess they've delegated that stewardship to us to some capacity, and we're creating the Azure security groups, and then we're also embedding some of the people who have access to the Pi data into that Azure security group, so that Pi community has access to it in Azure. And if the data science team or some other group needs access to it, then they request access through a defined process. So what we do is we create a data lake folder for all the data that's going to the cloud, and then they have to request access to the data lake folder. If that gets approved, then they'll have access not only to the data lake folder, but also to the time series insights data. So we use the same process for the data lake as we do for Azure Time Series Insights.
Okay, good, excellent. Anybody else want to add about data governance? Hopefully you'll find this thread interesting, the data governance part of it. We have a question, so we'll go to that.
Yeah, my question is a human resource development question. Where I come from in Peru, we don't have a lot of resources in the part of data analytics. We're starting. And we're at a stage in the company where we've been built up a lot of databases, a lot of information, but the IoT side is just starting, and we're starting to explode in terms of the volume of data, and struggling trying to get the capacity to extract the insights, integrating, comparing different databases to get that insights in business. Basically, because we don't have the know-how in the company in terms of resources on data analytics. My question is, from the experience that you've had on the panel, is that something that can be learned in-house? Something you're going to have to poach from outside Peru? Or what do you think? I mean, should it come from the IT side? Should it come from the OT side? What would you recommend in terms of trying to develop that?
I'll just say from working with customers that have gone through the journey over the last couple of years for a ton of economic reasons, there's not one answer, but it is an ecosystem. And so picking, and some of those people are here, is picking an ecosystem, a very finite set of partners that actually can collaborate in service of you and your organization, leave their badges at the door, and at any given time, based on the constraints in the market, can recalibrate in service of you. And that could be, a technology partner, a service provider that has those skills to be able to do that, because the technology, the people, everything's moving at a very aggressive clip. But there's typically not one organization. It's creating, I've been with companies that have done it. We've had 3 or 4 of us that have been able to pull this off. And their data science needs, their IT, Agile Scrum team needs, it changed completely year to year. And so by doing that, I've just spent some time, meeting the people that are out in the space and reaching out and connecting. Happy to share some of my experiences, even prior to Uptake, about how I've worked with companies to do that. But definitely doable, and we're seeing companies of all different sizes have just completely, their needs are changing yearly, quarterly right now, just based on the dynamics in the market. So you're not alone.
Yeah, I would finish it up by saying that it depends on the sophistication of your predictive model. So there's different levels of what you're going to do with that data. If it's highly sophisticated, then you're going to be looking for a system that can meet that. But there's other systems out there from a technology standpoint that focus on exactly what you're saying is, I don't have the resources in-house. And so that solution might give you more help within the solution to analyze that data. There's other very sophisticated systems out there that require data scientists to be part of that insight. So the technology changes depending on what your needs are. So I think there's an opportunity for you to find technology that can also support you more, as long as the sophistication of of your data model or predictive model isn't too high.
Well, we're about 2 minutes over. This has been an excellent session, great set of presentations. And I have to thank the audience for a great set of questions, very good interactive Q&A session, and I also thank the technology providers for adding to that. Thank you very much. It's break time. Enjoy the rest of the forum.